Hey, what is going on, guys? It's your boy Nick, finally back with another video. Man, oh man, it has been one hot minute since the last time I made a video, and honestly, it feels slightly awkward being in front of a camera again. Now, if you have been subscribed to my channel for a while now, it probably seemed like I completely disappeared and quit YouTube forever, but I can assure you that is not the case. Over the past 9 months, I've actually been incredibly sick with an inner ear disease known as vestibular neuritis, and this is actually something that I had never even heard of before. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining basically everything that's been going on in my life and why I haven't been able to make YouTube videos like it's actually been physically impossible for me. Just to let everyone know, this video will be completely aside from my normal finance content, but make sure to destroy the like button for me for the YouTube algorithm and to show that you want more of these finance videos in the future. In any case, I truly do hope my story finds value for any of you or anyone that you know who's struggled with a vestibular disorder, because it truly has been the hardest thing that I've ever encountered in my life. Or even if you need a motivational boost just to make it through a really difficult period in your life right now, like a breakup or your own medical diagnosis, I truly hope my story can help. And without further ado, let's get into exactly why I've been gone over the past 9 months. Alright, so this all started back at the end of May 2020 last year, and I was working from home at the time and generally keeping to myself because of the global pandemic going on. Then one unfortunate evening, I started to get a sore throat, and this worried me. Because for me, this is always the first step in having the common cold, so I thought that's just great. But do keep in mind, this all started during the heat of the global pandemic. The whole city was shut down, everything was getting into a worsening situation, and I naturally thought that I had COVID. Anyways, fast forward a few days, the sore throat basically disappeared, which was weird, and I didn't seem to get any other symptoms. However, I do remember I was sitting at my computer, working on the computer basically for about half an hour, and then in the span of about 5 minutes, I suddenly got the urge to throw up and felt super nauseous. Now at this point, I knew I had to go get tested for COVID. There was basically no other option. So the very next day I went and got tested, and then I did a little bit of yard work because I was feeling completely fine. And then of course, later that afternoon, I became extremely ill once again. The nausea was so debilitating, I couldn't even move from my bed all afternoon. Like, it actually felt like acid was burning through my veins and up my arms and in my chest. And I soon realized that the more activity I would do, the worse my nausea would get. This included walking, using my computer and phone, and even talking would make me incredibly sick. Anyways, over the next few days, the symptoms continued getting worse and worse and actually added dizziness into the equation. I would walk around and generally feel dizzy as if I was drunk, but nothing major was happening, didn't have any vertigo or horrible symptoms. It was just nausea and dizziness. But regardless, I decided to go to the hospital because I felt horrible and I had no idea what was going on. And while I was there, the ER doctor told me it's probably just a viral infection in my inner ear, which is pretty common, and it generally goes away over a period of 1 to 2 weeks. So then I waited and waited and waited, and probably after about 10 or 11 days, it still had not gone away, so I was freaking out at this point. So I ended up going back to the hospital. They gave me a CT scan of my head to try and figure out if I had a brain tumor or something very serious. Thankfully, I didn't have any of that. I was completely fine, but still I had no answers. Now keep in mind, I was living completely alone up in my house in northern Alberta, but I really needed help. Like, I couldn't even do dishes, I couldn't even drive, so I called my parents and they actually came up to help me. But then to my surprise, the very next day after my parents drove all the way from Kelowna, BC to Grand Prairie, like a 12-hour drive, I started feeling better. The nausea reduced, the dizziness started to go away, and I could generally do things again. I honestly felt as if everything was getting better and I was completely normal again, and I was, at least for a little while. So I ended up driving home with my parents to Kelowna to go recover with them for a few weeks to get completely back to normal, and this is when I uploaded my very last video talking about investors hoarding cash, and I briefly talked about my symptoms at the beginning of the video as if they'd completely gone away and there was nothing left. So anyways, once I felt completely better, I took a flight all the way back to my home back in Alberta to hopefully resume life where it was, and that's where everything started going downhill once again. Literally, as soon as I arrived back at my house in Grand Prairie, all of my symptoms came back, the nausea, the dizziness, and even more gastrointestinal issues that I had before. At this point, it had been about a month since my first initial onset of symptoms, so I knew the virus was completely gone at this point, and I knew that something bigger was going on. I also knew I had to get home to my family again as soon as possible while I could still function and move normally. So again, the very next week, I flew back to my family in BC, in Kelowna, BC, and that's when everything turned for the worst. Alright, so after making my way back to my parents' house in Kelowna, my nausea and dizziness were back in full force. I really couldn't do anything but lay on the couch all day long, only getting up for bathroom breaks and meals. In fact, I was even told by my doctor that this was the best thing that I could be doing, is just getting rest and laying low. But unfortunately, as you can probably expect by this point, my situation only got worse over the next few months. Some days were better than others, and it was almost as if my symptoms were cyclical, like I would be going through these episodes of horrible periods. Like I'd feel dead awful for about a week straight, and then I'd feel a little bit better over the coming weeks. And during these episodes, the nausea would last for days and days on end without respite. It was absolutely awful, and then followed by days of dizziness. But each cycle would actually dig me deeper and deeper into a hole of symptoms that were evolving over time. Like I ended up spending a few nights in the hospital after extremely bad nausea, and then I started getting this spinning sensation that would not stop. It was just a constant spinning sensation. It felt like I was strapped to a chair that kept moving around and around and around in a circle, and then I was also turning to the right at the same time. It was such a weird feeling. But yeah, this wouldn't stop and I had no control over it. Soon after leaving the hospital, I actually started getting extreme sensitivity to light. I'd have to wear sunglasses indoors all day long, basically with the lights out, because it would make me so sick and dizzy if light was going into my eyes. On top of that, I also started getting extreme sensitivity to sounds, so I'd basically have to wear earplugs all day because even the sound of my family talking was enough to make me sick. I would even get sudden mild hearing loss in each ear that would last for several hours or even days, which was completely weird, and even to this day I still have ringing in both of my ears. And you remember how earlier I said it was difficult for me to speak without feeling sick? Well, that got so much worse to the point where I had to whisper everything that I was saying. Now, a few weeks later, the symptoms kept on evolving and actually turning into crazy, weird symptoms in my eyes. Like I started seeing visual hallucinations and actually shape-shifting of objects in my view. I would be laying on the couch and staring at these completely straight ceiling beams in our house, and these beams looked like they were moving as if they were waves. Like, it was absolutely insane. And of course, because everything was always moving in my vision, it was impossible to escape it even if I closed my eyes, and it was extremely nauseating. I started to get these really bad headaches that may or may not have been vestibular migraines, which I've read up online, but either way, they were the worst headaches that I've experienced. Now, moving along, the symptoms continued to get worse. I started feeling a lot of symptoms in my body, so I'd feel dizzy in my arms, like they were spinning in different directions. I felt dizzy in my chest and my legs and literally every part of my body. I would lay down and it felt like my body was being transported up and floating around in outer space and doing flips and stuff like that. It was pretty insane. And just a side note, if you've ever seen the movie Get Out, the main guy, when he's getting hypnotized by his girlfriend's mom, that's basically the feeling that I was feeling when he's in that dark pit and he's just floating. I would even be sitting at the table for dinner, just eating my meal, and it felt like the chair was moving up and down and that my legs were moving all over the place. I would constantly have this internal buzzing feeling, like all of the muscles in my body were vibrating for no reason. I would even get these body shocks where I would be laying down completely still and then all of a sudden it felt like I was struck by lightning. And believe it or not, I would even get complete numbness down my legs and even in my chest and arms and neck and face. So that was pretty weird. I would be laying down and I couldn't even feel my body touching the couch or bed, like my legs were floating and flying everywhere, and even my whole body. And this is known as derealization. Finally, guys, the worst symptom of all has got to be the vertigo. And I'm sure you've heard of this before. It's not the fear of heights. It is when basically the spinning is so intense that your eyes start moving too and you have no control of it. It's horrible. Some nights I couldn't even lay on either side of my head because this would give me too bad of vertigo and it was so nauseating. Overall, I think it's fair to say my entire body was completely messed up with all of these symptoms and I had no idea what to do about it. So in order to be able to manage these symptoms, there weren't too many drugs out there to be able to help me with that, but I was taking multiple daily doses of prescription anti-nausea medication like ondansetron, as well as prescription anti-dizziness like beta-histine and acetazolamide. Along with that, I would basically be taking the maximum dose of Gravol every single day. Like I would pop a 100 milligram 12-hour extended release Gravol the first thing I would do in the morning, just to be able to get downstairs, eat breakfast, and lay on the couch. Then throughout the day, I would take multiple 50 milligram Gravol tablets just to be able to keep the nausea down. Then before bed, after taking all of my other prescription medication, I would take another 12-hour Gravol just to be able to make it through the night and sleep without feeling sick. Then of course the next day I would just wake up and repeat the process over and over again. It was absolutely horrible, and I really feel for you guys if you do have any of these symptoms. Possibly the worst part though was the anxiety, because I didn't really know what was going on with me. My body wasn't functioning as it was supposed to, and with vestibular disorders, there is an incredible amount of anxiety associated with them. As a result, I was getting depressed and my family was getting extremely worried about. So I finally started to see a silver lining when my doctor prescribed me an SSRI for antidepressant and anti-anxiety, and this actually started to help a little bit. Now you're probably wondering how I could have possibly eliminated all of these frankly unbelievable symptoms. Now by this point in time, I had seen about 15 doctors and specialists with no clue what was going on with me and no advice to offer. I had also had a CT scan, an MRI, x-rays, countless blood tests, and countless hospital visits with no luck. But one day at the end of August, after living through a week of hell and just basically hitting rock bottom, we started to do our own research, and my dad started to read some articles online. He found a website called vestibular.org and basically found out that I probably had vestibular neuritis. And he read that the only solution is to basically stay as active as possible, but then also to start vestibular rehabilitation therapy, or VRT. VRT is a form of physical therapy that involves doing repeated head, eye, and body movements so that the brain can eventually retrain itself. And this can only happen because of a phenomenon known as neuroplasticity, which is basically where the brain can retrain itself and compensate for disturbances in the balance system and the vestibular system. It is truly amazing that the human body can nearly adapt to anything, and dizziness is no exception. So I began doing head and eye movements, like moving my head up and down, and then also side to side, and then doing the same things with my eyes while keeping my eyes fixed on an object and then moving my head. And that would eventually help retrain my brain. At first, this VRT made me incredibly nauseated and dizzy, as to be expected because of a lot of movement and everything like that. But over the next few weeks, I did start to feel a little bit better. They say it takes about 6 weeks for the brain to adapt to these movements and actually start compensating, but clearly for me, it's taken a lot longer because of the severity of my case. However, each and every day I do continue to perform these exercises, along with many other body movements that I have begun to incorporate, like squats, push-ups, sit-ups, twists, shrugs, and basically anything that I can do to stay active. But the key to recovery is to continue moving and continue doing exercises and basically doing as much as possible so your brain can begin to compensate for this lack of balance. In fact, making YouTube videos, this one right now, albeit extremely slow and difficult for me, is actually part of my recovery plan, and I am going to be making a lot more videos to try and get back into my normal routine. And although every day I am trying to do more than I could the previous day, there are obvious setbacks, and I do still fall into these episodes that can last 5 to 7 days long, with really intense nausea and dizziness and vertigo and all of the horrible symptoms. But it's all about stepping back up and pushing forward and knowing that there is an end in sight. In addition to the VRT and the activities that I've been doing, I have completely cut out all of the medication that I take except for the SSRI. So like the anti-nausea and anti-dizziness, these actually prevent your brain from compensating, so it is not advisable to take them. While they may have helped me in the short term, they just contributed to a longer recovery period because it did not help me in the long term. As for how I'm doing now, I would say that I've recovered about 30% from my low point in August, or even slightly more. Through all of my recovery, I can easily now do a 15-minute walk, I can sit upright for several hours, I can use my phone for several hours per day. I'm starting to use my computer a lot more, with the video editing, of course, and then many other activities like playing the piano. These are starting to get me back into my normal routine. And this might not seem like a lot to you, like a 15-minute walk per day, that's nothing. But comparing to where I was at the end of August, this is leaps and bounds ahead. However, there's no denying the fact that I still have a long way to go. And it's very hard some days to find the motivation and happiness to continue pushing forward, but I know it's the only option, so that's what I continue to do. I know I'm recovering, and I know a near 100% recovery is possible with time and effort. So if you are going through this, you can make it through. Just keep up the effort. There are better days ahead, and things can only get better from where you're at. Well, I hope you all found this video interesting, and if not, helpful for those of you who have a vestibular disorder or know someone who is struggling with this. As for the future of my channel, which is probably what all of you want to know, I am going to start uploading investing videos once again, but please be patient with me because I will probably be uploading very infrequently to start as I continue my recovery and it gets a little bit easier to start making YouTube videos again. My symptoms are still very sporadic, so I can't really keep to an uploading schedule yet, but I will be doing my best to upload as much content as possible. But I just want you all to know that I'm super excited for the future of this channel. I have tons of video content ideas to be posting about, and I have been doing a ton of investing over the past few months, so I will be updating you with my portfolio very soon. So thanks for watching, stay tuned, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already because I'm going to be posting a ton of great content. And with that said, I will see you guys in the next one.